So here I want to document this exercise thinking about the user interface for the loan calculator app. Here's the problem, right? You have this limited user screen, and in traditional calculator loan apps, you have, let's say you have a loan type, and then you have fields to edit, right? The interest rate, the amount of parcels, months, for example, or years. And then you have other fields, right, here across this vertical area. But then when you want to edit this, of course, this field, for instance, the interest rate, the keyboard appears, right? So you keep adding and going back and forth. I added this, then I added this field, then I added the other field, and we need to scroll this area above the keyboard. That's okay. That's one thing, right? And then you have, once you do, for example, number of interest and number of months and the value, you flip between charts and visualizations. For instance, looking at the parcels, and you go back and you edit the very same thing. For instance, you want to compare 36 months versus 24 months in terms of the how much you're gonna pay in interest, for example. And this is like re-editing the very same thing, like a text editor, right? You lose your history. That's a problem, I guess, because ideally, I think people want to compare, right? You have a timeline here, and you have 36 months calculation in the time versus 48 months, right? Across time. So that's kind of a problem, and I think here is a proposal following the idea of conversational user interfaces, right? So imagine you have a chat session, right, in your mobile device. Keyboard is not a period at all. You have just a plus, meaning I want to create a new loan calculator, right? So you're here. We start with the idea of a session, then of course you click it plus. You go to this dialog menu. You want to do a house or a car, right? If I click house, I get to this one. You see house appears here in the chat, right? This is the timeline. It goes up, meaning older. This is new, just like WhatsApp or whatever. And then as you click it house, and house went to the timeline, it appears here your options, right? What do you want to edit about this? You want to type the number of months, years, for example, or their interest or value. And if I click here, say this is not months, it's parcels, right? Or months. And then you are now into months, right? And within this appears the keyboard 1 to 9, and the calculator keyboard, and the field. So just like in WhatsApp, you're sending a text. Here, you're not sending a general text. You're just sending the events for the numeric field, 36, for example, right? And that, or 120 in my example. So, went through the timeline. This is subject to disappearing, right? If your cell phone is smaller, what you have is this. Okay, you have a house, you have 120 parcels, and now you still have options to do what's next, right? So the app is going to suggest interest and value, not months. But of course, months is in third place, because let's say, right, you type it wrong. So if you change this to 100 to 60 parcels, of course, you're still maybe it's still time to edit, right? This is like revisioning this guy here, right? Or, it could be another entry. It doesn't really matter. The fact of that matters is that it is a timeline. And then you go on. And the point is, you get to a point where you have this, all right, loan with a house, with interests, with months, with a value, and then you're revisiting, and for this, you are at this level making a pie chart, okay, or between whatever you're paying or you borrowed and the bank interest, And for this guy, you might be actually revisiting months. So if this was months and this is version 1, this is version 2, this is a month editing. And then for this, you get a new chart, right? And meaning that in this chat, the system knows that you wanted, in the end of the day, to compare and change only months, producing you a possible report of, a chart like this, right, versus a chart like this, because you change the amount of months to lesser months. Say this is 120 months, this is 60 months, right? So that's a kind of idea for this UI. This is common in many business in the mobile, right? It's just to make yet another calculator, but we're trying to think of a new UI. Of course, if you see this from the events perspective, from the user story perspective, what users are actually doing, what they want to do, you're gonna be able to identify their pangs, right? What is the narrative that they're creating? This is also good for teaching. And we believe this is slightly educational with this timeline that I can produce different animations. So this could be a means for creating educational storylines for loans, okay? Of course, if you think socializing is a chat, we're capturing the data of the user, we can compare different stories across in regions, and because it's a chat, we could also eventually have chat-based interactions, right? Suggestions, like as if the calculator is talking with you in a chat window. I don't know.